that note with Parker Whirling.
Well, Spencer Thomas, you want to jump into this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Sweet.
Mhm.
Thanks for joining me, man. What is this, the third episode we've done together at this point?
Yeah, third one.
We were recounting our history on this podcast, and up until your episode, every episode I'd done has been on Zoom.
Yeah.
And you were the one who really encouraged me to start this podcast in person. And I had said that to a few people before that, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it at some point. And you were the only one that was like, hey, did you get that set up? Hey, did you get that set up? Because I want to do this pod. I'm like, okay, well, I can't let them down. So when we made it happen, and then ever since then, like, I've really tried to keep it in person every time, and it's been really cool to be able to actually sit with somebody across from me and communicate with them, and without having to worry about Zoom internet connection and things like that. And it's nice to actually get to know the people in your community, because before that it was people spread out all over the world, which is its own cool thing. But I like having it be this bit of a local talk show or a local plug for these artists that I think are really great.
Yeah.
So I'll start this episode by thanking you for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only time I've ever gotten anything done was out of urgency or out of necessity, so if anybody was like, well, we need this done next week, I'm like, all right, well, shit, I guess I better do it.
Yeah.
And I kind of work with a deadline and thrive on it. So,
Under pressure.
I'm happy to have helped if that is the case.
Yes,
Yeah.
you really did. And you just moved to Atlanta, right?
June.
In June, that's right. I guess we probably moved here around the same time. I moved in May, so maybe just a couple of months before you. But now getting the podcast started back up. So what prompted the move here? How do you feel about Atlanta? You came from Athens before.
Yeah.
What's the difference to you now that you've been here for maybe, 8 months?
Yeah. Well, my girlfriend and I had been dating for, a couple years, and I was on tour with Futurebirds, and I'd come back home. I'd like spend time with her in Atlanta, and then go to Athens, and I'd probably sleep in my own bed for 2 days, and then go back out on tour. And it was always just being home in these 2-3 day stints. And, if for anyone who's done excessive touring, you really need almost equal amounts recovery, in order to really get yourself right again. So, I mean, it would really just be do a load of laundry. I almost didn't really shop for groceries. So it just came to a point where
they're all going to spoil when you're gone for a month.
So it got to a point where I was in Athens with my roommates, and, and Madison was actively seeking and looking for a house, and she found a spot in East Atlanta Village, not very far from where she used to live. And, and she said, well, it would be super tight if I was paying for this by myself, but it would be a lot more helpful if you just lived with me. And I was like, okay, well, maybe now is the time for us to do that. And so I moved in June while I was also promoting The Joke of Life. And so I was out on tour with Jordan of Rose Hotel, who lives here in Atlanta. And we were doing shows together, kind of weekend warrior runs through the Carolinas and whatnot. And so I would just do that and get off of the road, and then just pack up stuff in Athens and just be moving stuff all month in June. So it was a wild month. So really by, I think 4th of July was about when we kind of had all of our stuff in some sort of place. But
it always takes longer than you think it's going to take, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying some sort of place,
right? Right.
Like now,
in the house,
right? Right. It was inside the house, but now, I mean, January, we've had some cold weeks, snowy weeks,
yeah,
and man, the house has been like it's been like my sanctuary, you know.
Nice.
I've been like mopping it and just keeping it
Love that.
tight, you know. I mean, and there's you know, it's like what cleanliness is godliness, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
You know,
I love cleaning. And I love
I can
zoning
tell.
out, taking an hour. Yeah, and this is like, honestly, I wish it was a little, it's not that it's not clean, but I wish things were a little less messy. There's just kind of things around that that don't have their place.
Yes.
Like you were saying, and I want to find a place for all these things. And even though I moved in September into this house, I like, you know, you get it to a place where you're satisfied for the moment. Yeah. And then it's hard to like pick back up from that. So I try to get everything I can done like early on before I'm satisfied with like where it's at the moment. Cause then it's hard to like I said, pick back up and keep things moving in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, order is for lazy people, you know, if that makes sense. Like, because if you always have to have this overhaul of cleaning just to keep your house clean, then you know, it requires so much more effort. So if everything has their place and you're willing to, you know, take the remote and watch TV and then put it back in its spot, if you can repeat that with everything that's around your house, then you can maintain cleanliness without getting overwhelmed by this mess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can't teach somebody that. It's so hard to like, some people just didn't grow up like that. But yeah, anyway, I'm glad we're on the same page about that. We're also on the same page about the album you picked to start off this episode as being such an amazing album.
Shall I reach for it?
Yeah, let's grab it, as well as a good reference for one of your tracks on here. Let's talk about the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds.
I'm trying to figure out my left.
If you're watching, we have a great display here, very
Pet
QVC.
QVC style.
Lori from Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Vibes. But yeah, what made you pick this one?
Okay, so the reason I picked Pet Sounds is because, you know, we were talking about the record, The Joke of Life, and I am really big on taking you through a journey. I don't want you to hear one song and think that you've heard all of the songs. So this song in particular is called Always Never You, and it's about kind of having this wandering in the back of your mind in a dreamlike state of, you know, oh, it never worked out between us. You know, we always kind of remained friends, or we were just like in and out of this zone of maybe being into each other and maybe not, and kind of dreaming and wondering what that is like, you know. And also experiencing maybe a loss in some way. And the melody itself played so well into Pet Sounds stylistically that I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we just leaned into it? You know, I think a lot of people, when it comes to a production standpoint, if something sounds like something they know, they're kind of afraid to lean into it. But from my personal experience, I feel like we're going to lean into Pet Sounds, and it's not going to sound like Pet Sounds because we're not the Beach Boys. I'm not Brian Wilson, you know, but we can take these head nods and give it our best shot. And so we recorded the song. I was almost terrified of recording it because I just thought it was going to be so painstaking. And I had Andrew McFarland on drums. I had Ryan Engelberger on bass. And I was just playing guitar. So that was the basic track. And I think we picked the first one.
Love that.
And I mean, I'm like, what the hell was that?
Why did we even keep going?
Yeah, like, why the hell did I even stress about it, you know? But then we went back through and we started kind of cutting out maybe like drums here or there and replacing it with percussion. And so we just pulled out a basket of all of the auxiliary percussion that they had at Chase Park. And, and Andrew was just playing everything. There's even like a clown horn just in one part.
I'll have to go back and listen for that.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah, because
that's a really good nod to the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
What other band is going to be associated with a clown horn?
Right. I mean, I'm sure there are others out there. I'm not.
Maybe so.
Yeah, not as much of a music historian as I would like to be, but yeah. And so we went back, and I went home and took the rough mix and got on GarageBand and recorded the background vocal part idea. So I think it's 3 separate parts as the background vocals, and they are actually blended in with Ryan's voice and Annie Leith's voice, because she played a little bit of string stuff on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the stuff that I recorded on GarageBand at my house is actually on the record.
Oh, wow.
Including with blends from their voices singing along to those parts in Chase Park.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The GarageBand takes.
The GarageBand
made it to
takes.
the final record.
Yeah. There are some also on How Come Heartbreak that I recorded at home as well. And but we took those, and then when it got to the mixing process, Nate and I were sitting there, and I was like, the mix is not right. It's not right. I want it to sound like this. And then we go back and we listen to Pet Sounds. We listen to God Only Knows or something. And Nate was like, it's interesting because we're trying to do this, mixing, we have a whole spectrum, right? From left to right. And usually we want like lead vocal in the center, and then we're just kind of filling in. A lot of people usually put electric guitars pan to the left and right, whatever. Everybody's got pretty regular tricks, but Nate was saying that because of the time period, they only had LCR, which is left, center, right. Mm-hmm. They only had 3 options to place each thing. And it made it so simple. I went, oh, okay. So we limited our mixing options and just said, all right, well, we'll put this vocal here, and then this vocal here, and then lead vocal here. And we just took everything and just put them in one of those 3 places and just simplified it.
Yeah.
I could probably listen to it now and still tell you that the mix is not right.
Of course.
But it was good enough to share.
Yeah.
Finally.
That's cool that you guys thought about the historical context of the mixing instead of just, let's get this to sound right. Mm-hmm. It's like, in thinking about the context of the reference, the time period of the reference, and the limitations that they had, you were able to turn it into something that is more accurate instead of maybe more, more modern, certainly. Mm-hmm. And that probably helped you guys get there quicker instead of thinking like, oh, should the tambourine be at 45 degrees to the left? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, exactly. Let's just have left, center, right. And I remember there was a song I did a year ago that I went in with a reference for, I had a few references, but one of them was a Spoon song. And in that song, they had the drums like pan to the right, classic Beatles type of thing.
Yeah.
And going in with that, knowing that I wanted that, just immediately set the tone for the whole thing and like how we were going to record it moving forward.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to go into something thinking about the mixing options or, even more specific, like panning. But that's cool that you guys took that traditional approach to it.
Yeah. I mean, everything's been done. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as much as we want to deny that, every topic has been written about, every chord change has been used, and we can try to limit ourselves and think that it's not okay to nod to something else from the past. But I think it's perfectly okay because the group of people nodding to that influence are not going to make the same thing. I mean, anybody that we're nodding to from the 70s, 80s, even the early 2000s are nodding to something from further back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always compare music to cooking or baking.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many ingredients, and you can have like a cookie baking competition between 5 different people. Same ingredients, flour, sugar, water, eggs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're all going to be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't it be the same with music?
Yeah.
It's all the same ingredients, same instruments. I mean, obviously there's different ways you can go and add some weirder stuff, but if you want to keep it pretty simple and have just drums, bass, guitar, keys, vocals, you're still going to get, an insane amount of variation within, even if you're all trying to make a Beach Boys song, or if you're all trying to make a Spoon song, you're going to get naturally variations because we're all different in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't in the room. We're not going to be able to get it right.
Exactly.
And I really love that because I think that it makes me think about the personality of a song. The way I sing Always Never You is not the way that I sing Desperate Man or The Joke of Life or any of the other songs on the record, because I think that helping you find the reference is giving you a way to express the song's character, because every song, regardless if it's from your personal viewpoint or if you're writing as a narrator, it has a character. And so our voices can change to express that. And so because we were going Beach Boys, I was singing like at the peak of my range, but trying to keep it soft and sweet. And there are even moments where my voice breaks a little bit, but Ryan was like, it's great. It's great. Keep
Totally.
it, but I wouldn't have done that if it was another song. So I love that about making records, and, plan on continuing to do that as I make the next one.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So before we move on to the next record that you're talking about, it has been about 8-9 months ish since you've released The Joke of Life. What are your thoughts on it now, looking back on it? What are some things you took from that album that you want to bring into this next one or your future releases? Maybe what are some lessons you've learned that you don't want to repeat? I know that was a lot.
No.
At once.
No, I mean, it's kind of been at the forefront of my mind. Let me take a mic adjustment.
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I don't want it to take so damn long.
How long was the first one?
I mean, I started tracking The Joke of Life. Actually, I shit you not. When we recorded the basic tracking for Desperate Man, that was late November of 2020.
Wow.
Straight up, like not long after I moved to Athens. And I wanted to just release that as a single. I got it mixed and mastered 2 different times. And it wasn't right. And, and I mean, I also was in like a heavy Futurebirds touring zone in 2021 when I tracked the rest of the songs. 2022 and 2023 was kind of getting in a place where I'm like, all right, I have a couple days here to do some overdubs. And then I'd sit there and think about them. And, it was just like, it was very spotty. I wasn't able to really immerse myself in the record fully. And The Joke of Life actually came as the last song. It was the last song that I wrote to be on the record.
Wow. Which feels like a really solid, what's the word? Not a prologue, but overture maybe in a way to start the album.
Yeah, and my friend Cody, who did all the record design, We are always talking back and forth about the things that probably nobody else is going to really pay that much attention to. But, I love my friendship with Cody for that, because we are very detail oriented when it comes to putting our records together. But he's like, imagine this like a play, but it's between two people. And we start with the joke of life, and it's sort of like the intro, the overture or whatever. And I was going to put Misty Eyes second. He said, no, you need to put it last, because it's that lighthearted, like, whatever, you're going to go through some tough shit. You just got to get over it.
Yeah.
And so we bookended the record with those two songs. So that way you could kind of go through the rest of them. And I talk about a he, or I talk about an I perspective. There's a she that I talk about a lot, who is not necessarily the same character, but you could take it as that if you wanted to look at it that way. So it was almost like the joke of life became this musical. And if you really wanted to stuff it into one storyline, you could.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
did you go into it with that intention?
Hell no.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds daunting.
Yeah. Oh no. And we didn't, but Cody kind of helped me with the track listing and gave me the reason why this is how it should go, and this is the storyline. And I went, you're right. No more on that. I understand. But still, regardless of that, the album, no matter how proud I am of it, took way too long. I had a lot of different hands in it, which I love. I loved that it was, so much Athens, Atlanta, beyond royalty, had a little sprinkle on the record.
Yeah.
But I'm already working on record 3 with Nate Nelson at Tweed.
Cool.
And I'm like playing bass and drums again, and we're playing with drum machines and synths, and we're doing, it's just the two of us until we decide that somebody else needs to play something. So we're going to make the record within our talent range until we decide that somebody absolutely needs to play this part or do this thing. So I'm trying to keep it close and tight and not, I was sending progress mixes of Joke of Life to all of my friends, and I'm like, I'm just going to put my head down and get this done. I mean, like, hopefully mixes by June of this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when did you start?
A few weeks ago.
Oh, okay, cool. How's it been going this quickly? Is it a bit of a like a whiplash, or does it feel exactly like what you wanted?
I mean, we've had some space. We'll go in and we'll work a full day or a day and a half, and then have a little space from it. But we had one song that started with a drum machine, and I was playing acoustic guitar on it. I added some synth pad stuff, and it felt so spacious. And it's a little, like, I always have these very tight songs, like, where you can't poke a hole in them, And so I'm trying to experiment with, what if it was like if I let the song breathe a little more. And this was my first experience with this song in particular. I'm not going to start shouting titles anywhere because, they won't appear for a while.
Right.
But, we were listening back, and I just realized, that's all it takes. If the song is good and speaks for itself, it really can be pretty minimal. And once we got that down, it really made us conceptualize what the rest of the record looks like. And so instead of going in with drums, guitar, and bass, we're trying to go, all right, well, how about we figure out what the beat is, tap it into a drum machine, I'll play keys or guitar, whatever the song was written on, to that. And then we start figuring out what needs to fill in the spaces. Do I need to go back and play real drums and play bass? Do we need an electric guitar at all? And trying to explore that way.
Keeping it down to its basics.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really hard thing to do.
So hard.
It's much harder than just throwing everything you can imagine at it.
Mm-hmm.
But what is fun that I am trying to do more often is allowing myself that space and that time to go crazy and have everything on there. And previously I would do that and then be like, all right, cool, it's got everything I want, sweet. But now, like, I have a song that I've done with Tommy, and it's been a long time, and he doesn't know this yet, but I want to come back to it and strip away some things after having heard it so many times and seeing, like, what can we take away from this and still have the whole thing standing. Because sometimes there is stuff that you're just used to hearing, but doesn't necessarily need to be there. And once you take it away, it might be jarring at first, but actually it's maybe cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, going back to another reference, but you think about like Tom Petty, Free Fallin'. It's the dumbest song in the world. I mean, like, and by dumb, I don't mean it's a stupid song. I mean dumb as in simple.
Yeah.
As in, like,
that's the first song I ever learned on guitar.
No frills, 3 chords.
Yep.
Great hook, great lyrics, and it's just there. And it feels like it always has been. And I think the more you add to, it's easy to cloud it and just totally blow it. And I think with The Joke of Life, I did the exact same thing that you're talking about. I wanted to throw everything in and then subtract. And I was curious after going through that process about the idea of what if I just didn't have all these extra options? If I didn't have somebody play 3 takes of this acoustic guitar that we might end up totally scrapping anyway.
Right.
You know, what if we listen to the song itself to a tempo and then we go, okay, what does it need? And so I like the fact that it's pretty much just been Nate and I in there cooking on the track. And then we're thinking, it'd be cool to have this. We'll hire this person to come in and do this on this song, you know, and make it very cut and dry, like this is your job when you show up. But for the most part, we're just going to co-produce the record and see how it goes from there.
That's great. And maybe you don't even bring anybody else on. Maybe you just get to
Maybe
the
not.
end and you're like, hey, that was sick.
Well,
you nailed it.
It's interesting because, you know, I think like you play drums and you dabble in other instruments.
Yeah.
And, you know, I played bass for a while, but playing bass on this track, like I was talking about, I was sitting there playing bass and going like, kind of second guessing myself. But I realized I know what the intentions are for the song better than anybody else. So if I want something that is simple and musical, and I know how to play bass well enough to do that, then why shouldn't I just do it?
Totally.
Instead of bark at somebody else from the control room and say, no, more like this, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if I want a clarinet, that's a different story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It is a funny balance between allowing people to come in and influence your song for better or worse, because there's been so many times where the songs I've made in the studio and put out, my favorite parts of the song are something that somebody else came up with or brought to the table. And like truly, that's such a cool thing. But also, this most recent song I put out, Gumball, is the first time I've ever played drums on my own track. And that was like the first, not my first instrument. Guitar was, and then bass, and then drums. But drums for the longest time was what I played in other people's bands.
Yeah.
So I kind of consider myself more of a rhythmic person in that way.
Yeah.
Who just happened to start being like a singer-songwriter, but it was always like a rhythmic addition to somebody else's thing.
Yeah.
So it was cool to go back to that because I had to decide, am I doing enough? Because I was barely doing much on that song. It's a lot of toms and kick and like as basic as it gets on the drums, but it was really fun, and it feels like something that I would have done as opposed to songs that I've put out that have other drummers, like Tony Hunlow. Shout out to Tony. And he's an amazing drummer. And it's cool to get his take on it, but it was fun to be able to have my own original vision of what the drums would be because it's just coming straight from my body.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like you were talking about, am I doing enough? But chances are you know the song well, so you're instinctually going to play the things that you would want to hear on it. So I think there's a lot of self-trust involved. I think I've always gathered around people around my songs because I do like being with other people and getting to kind of high five on the idea. But I guess just closing in the circle a little bit and going like, can we all high five on the idea if it's just, 2 or 3 people? And, it can be a cost thing, but it can also it narrows the focus on the goal at hand and go like, all right, well, Nate and I are basically just 50-50 co-producing this. So if I'm playing something and I'm going to ask him and go, is this working? Are we going the right way? And he's just setting up the mics and listening, So we get to have this unique opportunity to just play off of each other and then be very decisive as to who comes in and gets to high five with us on it.
Right. For that moment. Maybe.
Yeah.
As a hired gun.
Mm-hmm. For that moment. But I don't know. I think The Joke of Life is a very classic sounding record, and I wanted it to be that way. And I'm going a little more caution to the wind. I'm just like, let's experiment.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love an experimentation. I'm very curious. You'll have to keep me updated with all that.
I will.
When we were messaging about getting this podcast going, you mentioned that you felt like you had a new, fresh musical perspective to share since you've left your time with the Futurebirds. So I'm curious, where are you at now musically?
Well, I've just played my last show with Futurebirds in December, and it has been, almost 4 years of playing with them. So, I mean, that's hundreds of shows. And I was all over the country a lot of times, and it was difficult to get space to create, it always felt pressured because when I was home, I'm like, well, I got to write something because I'm going to go on tour again and I won't have the same opportunity. And I feel like I have a little more edge with what I want to write and what I want to say because, not saying that being in Futurebirds or any of the guys had anything to do with like inhibiting my freedom to make music how I wanted to. It was just that it always, in my perspective, was kind of brushed to the side because playing with them took up the majority of my time. So I focused more on being a keys player, serving their songs as well as I could, and also just managing being gone a lot, which took a lot of energy. And so to have my energy back, granted, having to hustle a little more to figure out my own personal income situation, but I have more space and more time at home, and I can be a little more clear-headed, stretching, meditating,
Love it.
getting in that space to where I can sit down and go, this is my career, and I can write about whatever I want. And so I think not only am I kind of reaching out sonically, but I feel like the songwriting subject has changed. I felt like my first record, Hangin' Tough, that came out in 2019, it was very much like, Jordan said the word navel gazing the other day, because it's talking about like looking into yourself. It was very much like me and my feelings. And I started kind of opening up a little more in the joke of life and giving characters, even though sometimes they would kind of circle back to me in some way. And now I feel like I'm really opening up a zone that the songs can take you on a journey and have a story, but there's some of them have a little darkness to them, like just a dark twist or edge, or and also just be funny, because there are certain lines in songs that I've written that if I play it solo and I get a laugh, that's just as satisfying, if not more, than if somebody is really moved,
Yeah.
or they're dancing. I'm like, if I write a line that I think is funny and I get a chuckle, I'm like, hell yeah, And I don't mean it's comedy music. I just mean like using clever wording as a tool to just, tell a story, but be funny and realistic about it.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, sorry to derail you, but
Don't.
that just immediately reminded me of in The Joke of Life. I was listening to it this morning before you got here, and there's a line, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, like, you wanted a helping hand, but, like, what did you expect with your
fingers balled up in a fist?
Yes. And I was like, oh, that's such a funny, like, just imagery, like to have the open hand versus the fist. I don't know. And that just made me like perk up a little bit. I was like, oh, that was cool. I liked that.
Yeah. Thank you. And like I said, that was one of the last songs that was written. And I think that it was almost the intro into me writing a little more in that light. And I have found that it's become, I don't know, a lot more interesting to me, because we have to chase what interests us. And, I remember being younger, and one of my favorite bands had an album come out. I'm like, well, this is completely different from the last record. I hate it, And you start being like, well, why couldn't they make another one of these? And getting into this and doing it more professionally, I get it now. Because, if you've already done that, you've already done it. And you have to chase the songs that interest you. And I realized that the ones that had any sort of navel gazing, as we were calling it, wasn't really interesting to me anymore, at least for this time period. And so but the songs that felt clever and gave you a story and gave you something to kind of chuckle about or make you think differently, that's the kind of stuff that I wanted to lean into. I don't feel like I have a lot to say from my own heart, but I want to use my music as a tool to offer maybe a interesting perspective on the modern world that we live in, but like be funny about it, you know?
Yeah, doesn't have to be so,
Yeah.
I don't know, morose.
Mm-hmm.
As easy as it could be to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's too easy. It really is. And I've been reading Randy Newman's book. Well, it's a writer who wrote about Randy Newman's life. And he spent a lot of time writing from this unreliable narrator, you know? So he has written as a bigot or a racist or, you know, but that's the character. It's not him. He's just writing because, like, I think the best way to shine a light on something is to become the character as opposed to write about it from like a high tower, you know? And I found that really interesting. So I've kind of used that a couple of times. Not saying that I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
But like, for instance, just talking about like technological overstimulation. I have a song on there I wrote as a person looking to capitalize on that, as opposed to me talking about too many screens.
It's too much, yeah.
You know? So I wanted to write as the guy looking to capitalize on that. And I looked back at the lyrics, I was like, this is funny. I'm having a good time with this, you know? Because then it feels limitless and like it's obviously a joke.
Right.
You know? But I think that is a almost better way to be thought-provoking, at least for me at this point in my writing.
Right. Taking a slightly left of center approach to the way you might normally write a song is such a fruitful way of finding these new avenues to go down and learning about your own creative process instead of just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta push the walls of the box.
Exactly. Keep expanding it. Well, cool. Spencer, that's going to take us over to the last 5. I mean, we could talk forever. I feel like you, of all people, are like the one person I could definitely do like a 4-hour-long podcast with. But we do have to try to keep it around an hour or so.
Yeah.
So why don't we
Has
move
it already
on?
been close to that?
It's about 45 minutes, and I know that last 5 is not necessarily the fast 5.
Yeah.
So I want to leave us some time to kind of talk about these as well. But
Okay.
you know the drill. We're just going to move around, try to pick a couple of these questions here.
Okay.
And then we'll be all wrapped up.
Okay. Let's see. Best live show you've seen. The first thing that comes to mind that is actually very recently and is going to be a great shout out to a local band here in town, Improvement Movement.
Yes. I've never seen them, but I've seen Clark sound play, and he's in that. And they are so sick.
Yeah.
Where did you see them play?
At 529
Okay.
in December. And it was just one of those experiences. They had this whole production, had a big, like a backlit screen. Not that they need any of it because they're an amazing band, but they had this screen behind them at 529. They set up this whole production to where it tripped you out. I mean, it was, you know, it was like images of them on that back screen, but then going into this spacious world. I mean, it was really, it was an amazing visual experience to an already so tight and pleasing band, like just about as perfect as harmonies as I've ever heard any, you know, local band, approachable band.
Right.
And they're great dudes. They offer the Improvement Movement. It feels like a lively and beautiful experience, you know. They make you feel like you're part of it. And yeah, I just watched that and I was floored, and I thought, this is the smallest room I'll be able to catch them in ever again.
Yeah.
That was the feeling that I got.
And they opened for Kruangbin at the Eastern, which is insane.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they are getting the shine that they deserve.
Yeah.
Which makes sense that 529 probably the last small venue you'll catch them at,
Mm-hmm.
unless they're, intentionally trying to play a small venue for like a vibe.
Yeah.
As opposed to just trying to like go on tour or something like that. But that's so sick. And then I remember they got added to the next night as well for whoever was playing. I can't remember who it was. Also at the Eastern. I still haven't seen them yet though, but I need to.
Yeah.
And quick little aside, I wanted to ask you about, you opened for Futurebirds at the Eastern, which is one of my favorite venues here in Atlanta. How was that experience?
For the whole time before playing the show, it was an absolute mess. I feel like I was trying to accomplish so much. So me and Sam Johnson, who's a photographer here in town, we went out and took some photos, and I came back, and like, we had guys from Futurebirds who were running late from Nashville, got stuck in, all the Chattanooga stuff and everything, just trying to get over here. Showed up late, sound check went late. And so I'm checking my watch because I'm like, this is going into my sound check. So I couldn't just do the Futurebird show and then relax like I usually have on tour, So I was like, all right, well, I'm opening and I have a 5-piece band, So I really was feeling a bit stressed. But the guys showed up. We ran through the songs that I was concerned about. Everything went fine. And man, just the 45 minutes, it was incredible. I mean, it was almost 2,000 people, It was the biggest crowd I've played for with a full band, and I milked every second of it. I did a song solo kind of in the middle, and the lighting tech was right on it. Like, I started playing the song solo, everybody walked off the stage, and he went pew, and like caught me like center spotlight and shut everything else off. And I was like, this guy, he knows. And shout out to the lighting director at the Eastern. It just made me feel like I was heading the right direction. Like, this is the kind of thing that I would love to do professionally. And so to be able to have that experience with the full band and really play these songs that way, God, it was so fun.
That's awesome.
So fun.
Man. All the videos looked amazing.
Yeah, dude. Cloud 9.
That's so sick.
Somebody filmed us doing Warren Zevon's Lawyers, Guns, and Money. You can find it on YouTube somewhere.
I'll have to look that up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Spencer, let's check question number 2 here.
Question number 2. Underrated artist at the moment. Another local-ish.
Yeah.
Kendrick Bearden.
Dude, yes. I couldn't agree more.
I tell people every chance I get about his first solo record. Somebody from Bitter Southerner really caught wind of his record and loved it and put it in, I think, maybe the top 50 of 2023.
Yeah. Bright as the Mind's Out.
Bright as the Mind's Out. Yeah. I mean,
that is really one of my favorite local records I've ever heard.
Yeah. I mean, it was just so well constructed. I mean, it's in the lines of perfection to me as far as a record goes.
And he's so calm about it, barely posts about it. He's so humble.
Yeah.
Like, you just created one of like the most sonically rich and like just songwritingly, like the songwriting is so, I don't know, intimate and complex, and it changes pace every song.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get enough of that album, and I haven't listened to it in a little bit, so that makes me want to go back and check it out. But for a while, that was like a go-to album for me, regardless of it being local or not.
Yeah. Yeah, buddy. I tried to write my own Iron Suture at some point, you know?
Iron Suture.
Yeah. I mean, like that song, I remember it was like, I think April of last year. And I just put that on. I was leaving somewhere and just got in the car and I was just like, I
love If I Could Be Happy.
Yeah. Oh,
that
man.
Song is great.
Yeah. So McKendrick, big shout out.
Big shout out. Yeah. I interviewed him a while back. So go listen to that.
Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah.
But listen to his album first. It's great.
Yeah. I'll have to put his out on in the car.
Absolutely.
After this.
All right.
All right. Question 3. Are we ready?
Let's check
We're
it out.
blowing through them a little more this time.
That's okay. That's all right.
Best album covers. Best album covers.
That's a tough one because there's, a million you can choose from.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of something that has really caught my eye in the past. Oh man.
I'm always partial to anything Radiohead. That's a huge favorite band of mine. Yeah, I got the Kid A art book right over there, and that's a favorite album cover. In Rainbow's a favorite album cover.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I was on here, or last time somebody got this question, I mentioned Yeah's It's Blitz, which is like this girl crushing an egg, and the yolk is just flying out of it.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
You recognize it.
See, I just said yeah. Something that just came to mind. You jogged my memory with the yeahs, but I know that they recorded at Sonic Ranch out in Tornillo, Texas. It's a pecan farm that's like near, like you can see the border wall.
Oh, whoa!
From the farm out there, but
I've heard of Sonic Ranch. I didn't know that's where it was.
Yeah, Faye Webster went out there. Bon Iver.
Okay, I think I've heard about it because of Bon Iver.
Yeah, but when Futurebirds went out there, we were in one studio and Cage the Elephant was in another.
Whoa!
So it's just weird. It was like a weird place to be tied in with all of these bands that we've listened to.
Right.
But one record that was made there was the Lil Yachty record, the most recent one where he really
psych rock one,
the psych rock one, and is the album cover where it's just like a bunch of business people with their faces all distorted and twisted.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that and going, "Whoa, this is wacky," and that really, just brought to my attention. I'm like, what could this be?
Right.
And it was, as soon as Black Seminole starts, I'm like, it's a clear departure.
Totally. Yeah, I do think that there's something about an album cover where it hits extra hard, of course, if you feel like the second you turn it on, it kind of proves the album cover right in that way, unless they're purposefully going for like the opposite effect.
Yeah.
But I feel like with that album, the Lil Yachty album, that when I saw that album cover, and I was never like somebody who listened to Lil Yachty before, but I saw that, I'm like, something about this seems different and cool. And then you put on that first song and you're like, oh, okay, this is a departure, and it all ties up almost immediately.
Yeah. You feel it right from that moment. I can't remember who he had playing on that record, but it's, yeah. I met one of the guys who engineered it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just out there, and couldn't have been a nicer fella.
Yeah. Did he give you any funny stories or cool things from that?
I mean, no, it was really just, we were all like, "You worked on that Little Yachty record. That's awesome."
Yeah.
I mean, it was just brief. About as brief as that. Yeah.
That's sick.
Westside Gunn, Pray for Paris.
That's right, dude. You got the jacket on.
I have it on the back of this jacket.
Yeah. Show it off for the YouTube video.
You can see it.
Yeah.
But it's based off of an old Caravaggio painting. I totally forgot about this as an album cover, but
That is also one that, every time I see it, I'm like, that goes so hard.
Yeah, I mean, when my friend Pete sent me that record in 2020, and it was one that I really leaned heavy into. But yeah, as soon as I saw it, Caravaggio was like I think Renaissance period Italian, kind of realism artist, and so it's David holding the head of Goliath, which is it's a pretty hard image, but the only difference between the actual painting and the record cover is that David is wearing chains.
Oh,
and I think and there's a picture of a baby in one of the medallions, and I think it might actually be Westside as a baby. I'm not really sure.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, but I just love how he took, and he did it on another record after that, but took this classic image, this old artwork, and then turned it into something to relate to the Westside Gunn record. And it was like, that was another one where I went, whoa, what is this about?
Right.
Yeah.
Also, Pray for Paris is just such a sick name as well.
Yeah, I know.
I love that you're such a Westside Gunn fan. I remember hearing that for the first time, being like, what?
Yeah.
That is so out of left field from what I would expect.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever listened to that Arm & Hammer album.
Yes, I did.
I love that album. What were your thoughts? I don't know if it might have been a little bit since you've listened to it.
The one with the pig heads on it?
There is that one, yeah. But they put out one after that I actually like a lot more.
Yeah.
Because it's a little more all over the place. The Haram, I think, is the pig head one.
Oh, yeah.
Which, talk about an album cover that strikes you.
Yeah.
Just, realistic pig heads, like actual pig heads. But I really like the one that they put out after that called We Buy Diabetic Test Trips. This is a hilarious name.
Yeah.
But that one's a great one you should check out. It's was one of my favorite albums of 2023 for sure.
Yeah.
And I like rap. And hip hop. I don't listen to it all the time. Certainly not nearly as much as like indie music and stuff like that. But that was hands down one of my favorites of that year. All the beats are just out of this world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much of that. I don't know. Westside will always say conductor, which I assume is like the. I don't know who the producer was on Pray for Paris. That might have been The Alchemist. I don't know. The Alchemist, he's been in some Westside stuff and some not so much, but a lot of those loops that they're just dark and like kind of, they just put you in a trance, and I really love that. I think at the time back in 2020, I was also a big runner, more of a runner than I am now, but I loved that. I loved listening to that record while I was running. It was just like, it was also just a nice pace for me too. But it feels very old school in a way, because they're just, they're taking a loop from some classic song and just repeating it. But there's some real darkness to a lot of the Westside Gunn, Arm & Hammer, Boldy James.
Yeah.
All those guys kind of within that same world. That I just love it. I think it's so cool. I think that's just like the hip hop underbelly that is getting more and more attention.
Totally. All right, let's see question number 4.
Question 4.
That's right.
I did get best underrated artist because I think I said Westside Gunn.
Oh, well, I remember you had an unexpected influence, and I feel like that's what that was.
Oh, maybe so. Dream artist producer to work with. I got that last time, so I'm gonna.
Okay, yeah, let's switch it up. I need to write some new ones. This is embarrassing.
No.
I always say I'm gonna do it, and then I forget before y'all come over.
3 Desert Island albums. Oh. That's hard because I feel like that just changes throughout your life.
Totally, yeah. So maybe it's just where you're at right now.
Yeah, where I'm at right now. Well, I mean, I've really been on the Randy Newman kick. Sail Away is a really special one. I think it was his third solo record. So that one has really resonated with me a lot lately. I also love the fact that some of his songs are just piano and orchestration. I'm kind of like, I think I want a piece of that,
Without any lyrics?
No, I mean, piano and
just
orchestra,
those.
like just with the song.
Right.
But like no drums, bass, guitar, just piano and like strings.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, that's interesting.
So some Randy Newman.
Yeah.
Sail Away, maybe.
Sail Away. Oh gosh. Bob Dylan's Infidels has really been hitting me.
I don't know that one.
There's like just imagine Bob Dylan with his lyricism, but it's produced by Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits, and his rhythm section is like a renowned reggae rhythm section.
Whoa.
It's one of my favorite Dylan records. I mean, I'm not crazy about the entire Dylan discography. Like I'm not a Dylan head, I guess,
Sure,
like a
me
lot
either.
of people are, but that one just struck me because I think just the take on it sonically made me really listen to Dylan in a new way.
That's how I feel about New Morning.
New Morning?
Yeah, I think it's called New Morning. It's like the gold looking album cover with just his face in the middle.
Oh.
It's not up top with like his most famous albums at all, but it's like what I want from him, which is like 2-3 minute songs.
Yeah.
He's not really doing the classic Dylan voice.
Yeah.
He's more singing in like a singy way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this feels more like his take on like a good Beatles record, which is what I kind of wanted from him. Whereas everything else is more what you'd expect from a Dylan album. So it's cool that the one you picked was also like a little bit left of center.
Yeah. I mean, right after that record was this, it's called Something and Loaded. The album cover is atrocious. It's like, it's just so bad looking.
Yeah.
But that's the one that has Brownsville Girl on it. I don't know if you've ever heard it. It's like an 11-minute song, and it's this whole story, and he really gets into this storytelling mode. I'll show you after, but
okay.
And I started listening to that because Cody was like, "What if you got a little more long-winded? You ever listen to Brownsville Girl?" And I was like, "Cody, that's a little long-winded for me, but it's it's amazing.
Okay,
it's amazing, yeah." And then I've really been on this. If I hope that I can say his name right. Labi Siffre is I think his name, but he. Oh God, what is his record? Crying, loving, laughing, lying, or something like that. Something
Is that 2 words? Labi Siffre?
Yeah.
Okay.
Labisiffre.
Okay.
Yeah. He's an amazing songwriter. Actually, there was one of the songs on the record that I realized was a like Kanye West used it in like one of his records in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he sampled from that, and it's funny when you find a sample from a hip hop song like on the album that it came from. But
yeah.
I heard one of the songs on the movie, and then I just got obsessed with the record, and I feel shameful that I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name or what the album title actually is, but
It's okay.
But I see it in my head, and I would love to take that one with me because those are beautiful songs.
Cool. Nice. Great answers.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up, man. Last question of the last 5. Spencer Thomas.
Yeah. So if I do on that note 5 times, do I get a 5-timers club robe?
A robe? Yeah.
Like SNL?
I'll get robes made. Well, then we'll wear them on.
Yeah. 2 artists you want to see collaborate. God.
And let's keep them living. We don't have to go into that's just too much.
Oh, yeah. Keep them living. Okay, keep them living. Oh, God. I'm going to try to find something wacky.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I'd be really interested to know what would happen if you had, like, Chapel Rowan and the Killers.
That would be cool.
I don't know. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if you had that kind of like hit cranking rock band play with Chapel Rowan?
I'm sure you get some cool stuff. I mean, they both are obviously hit makers, but totally different genres, I guess.
Yeah.
But not too far, now that I think about it.
I mean, yeah, it's like the Killers for 15 years.
Yeah, you were the one who put me onto that one Killers album.
Oh, Pressure Machine.
Yeah, Pressure Machine.
Woo, boy.
Hard album cover, by the way.
Yeah.
Another great album cover.
Yeah. Man, I gotta go back and listen to Pressure Machine again. That's another one that's much like Iron Suture. I'm like, that one will get me, that's a tearjerker every time.
Totally.
It's so good.
Sweet. Well, Spencer Thomas, man, thank you for coming on the pod. Everybody needs to go check out The Joke of Life.
Yes.
This is out now.
Yeah.
And be on the lookout for any future shows coming up, as well as some new music.
Yes.
Are there any shows you have coming up that you want to plug?
Yeah. Tomorrow. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, we probably won't hear it, but tomorrow, February 1st, I'll be playing at the Gray Eagle with Tyler Ramsey.
Cool.
And the show's almost sold out, so get to play my songs at an almost sold out Gray Eagle show in Asheville. I'm stoked on that.
That's so cool.
Playing with Robert Ellis mid February, 13th through the 15th. We're doing Charlotte, Greensboro, and Decatur at Eddie's Attic. Eddie's Attic on the 15th. Cool. And then I'm really getting into some living room stuff that's happening. I'm working with a company called Undertow, and we're going to do these book some living room tours where I can just play the songs and tell them and tell stories. And they've worked with people like my friend Pete and a guy named Will Johnson and John Moreland and Dave Bazan of Pedro the Lion. They've worked with a lot of different folks, and so I'm gonna do some living room tours. Probably Western run in August, and then maybe an East Coast run mid-September into October, Southeast in May. So we seek out hosts for that. So when you look up Undertow, you'll find my name. You'll see dates that we need hosts, and you can check that out. I'm looking for May and August and September. So see if we're coming near your city.
Offer your living room
so I can tell stories and play songs.
Yeah, you should be so lucky. Spencer, thank you for coming on the pod, man.
Yeah.
It's been a blast, as always.
Thank you, Parker.
On that note, with Parker Whirling.